Agotavach, this is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Chof Aleph, all the learning for this month. This month of Elul has been generously sponsored as an incredible Schos Aliyas Neshama for Esther Rezel Basra Meir B'siyata Dishmaya. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring Esther Rezel Basra Meir to higher in place in Gan Eden Shel Ma'ila. We're holding on Chof Amid Beis, approximately 7 lines from the bottom. The first word on the line is Esevei. And we're asking a kasha, which as you'll see in a moment is a long and lengthy, a slightly winded question as well. A question on Rav Sheshes. And Rav Sheshes was of the opinion that you could indeed loive v'goyel lecha tzayin. And that is going to be the question. And particularly Rav Sheshes dealt with the Batei Ira Chayma, a city in the walled house, a house in a walled city. There you go. From the time of Yeshua ben Nun, and a special dinim of Geula, of Pediyah, of redemption of such a house, which we're going to deal with. In the passing, we're going to take a journey through a field that someone is a makdish. Someone is a makdish sadeyu, and we have similar dinim when and how one can redeem such a field. So Esvei asks the Gemara again, Chafa Mebeis, Im Gaal Yigaal, says that the Torah Gaal Yigaal, if he redeems the field. Melamed, what do we learn from here? Shalev Vegael Lechatzayin. And this is one of those Gemaras that B'siyata Dishmaya we have to try to hold on, as is a bit long and lengthy, numerous steps. But let's try our best. So says the Gemara, we have a pasuk that teaches me Goyel, Loive Goyel, with regard to a field that was Hakdish, and the Goyel Lechatzayin. Asks the Gemara, or I should say explains the Gemara, why do we need a pasuk? Sheyachal, I would think, V'aloi dinhu, it's a Kal V'chaymer. Uma moicher steachuzo, when someone sells his ancestral field, sheyafa koichai, which has a strong koyach, that what? Shemigia yoivev v'lo nigala. What happens if year 50 comes and the field has not been redeemed? The halacha is chayzeres libaileha. The field goes back to its bailim biyovel. So that's a yafe koichai. That's a strong entity, a strong detail about a steachuza. Yet, there's a weakening that it's not able to be redeemed in halves. That's by a steachuza. Makdish, when it comes to Hakdish, it doesn't have that same strength. Rather, it's weaker than what? It indeed goes out by Yovel, even if it was not redeemed. Einoi din, shall we not say a Kal V'chaymer that shall have the same hura koicha, the same weakening? So why do we need the pasuk of Imigaal Yigael if we should be able to learn it out from a Kal V'chaymer? Answers the Gemara, no. When it comes to steachuza, there's a different point. It's weak, that what? Ligael miyad. What does it mean, ligael miyad? It means it needs to be redeemed right away. And if it is not redeemed right away, then he loses the ability to redeem it. Taimer be'makdish, whereas when it comes to one making something akdish, sheyafa koichai, ligael miyad, that it has a yipoy koyach, it has a strengthening, that he could redeem it right away. I explained that wrong. Let's explain that right. One more time. Go back a second. When you're meicher steachuza, that's a hiray koichai, that what? That you're not able, there it is. You're not able to redeem it miyad. Rather, you have to wait 2 years before you redeem such a field. Yet, when it comes to Hakdish, you're able to redeem it right away. So ask the Gemara, you don't have a Kal V'chaymer? Answers the Gemara, 2 lines to the bottom, Moicher, Bayis, B'batei Ira Chayma Yechiach, if you sell a house in a walled city, proves that what? On the last line of Chafa Mebeis, Sheyafa Koicha Ligael Miyad, Ve'en Lo V'Gav V'Gael Lechatzayin. So says the Gemara, what do we see? We see explicitly not like Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes held you're able to be live of the Gal Lechatzon, you can redeem in halves when it came to a Bayis Bibati Erachayma. But we see even this Brisa not that way. Answers the Gemara, Loi Kasha, as we turn over to Chavei Zamid Aleph, the classical teretz, Harabanan, Harav Shimon. It's a point that is machlokes, and therefore that's how we'll explain the discrepancy in the Brises. Now Rashi over here goes a little bit deeper in explaining that it's not simply the classical two different Tanaim with different opinions. It's a bit more fundamental than that. As Rashi continues to explain that who are the Rabbanan, they are they that hold that we don't give a reasoning for the pasuk. We do not say that just because it's Hayre Keichai in one area, it'll be Hayre Keichai in another area. And the Gemara proves this point on the top line of Chavav Amid Aleph, Tinichada Leivavav V'Ger Lechatzayin. One brisa says you could borrow and redeem in halves. Utanya Idach, and the other brisa says Ein Leivavav V'Ger Lechatzayin. So how do we reconcile the stira in brisa? Like Kasha, Ha Rabbanan, Ha Rabbi Shimon. And that's part A of today's shir. Part 1, which really wraps up the previous shir, the Kasha on Rav Sheshes and the Teretz Harabanan Harav Shimon. Now it's a little bit difficult. 4 lines down, the Gemara a little bit rolls back the clock to the Gzeir Shava that we just quoted on Amud Beis. Amar le Ravacha, Breder Rava le Ravashi, Ika le Mifrach, a little bit difficult, we're just like jumping into a Kalva Chaimer. Ika le Mifrach, Malamoichar Bais Batir Chaimer. When you sell a house in a walled city, Shkin Arakach li Goya le Oilam, there's a special day that you could be redeeming it forever. Whereas, there's no end to time to redeem the field. Whereas Taimer b'makdish, when it comes to being something hektish, yafa koichai ligoya la'ilam, that it can only be redeemed until Yovel. So says the Gemara. No, again, I read this wrong incorrectly. Time 2. Let's do this right. Let's go back again. That what? It's weak with regard to Ligaya La'ilam. What does it mean? It's weak with regard to Ligaya La'ilam, meaning you only could redeem it in the first year. They can redeem it forever. Answers the Gemara, Amar le Ravacha Saba le Ravashi. Misham de'ika le'meimar, can I respond? Yehader dina teisi b'ma'atzad. Let's go back and learn it out from a ma'atzad that there's a commonality between the two. And the Gemara explains that what? Moicher steach chuza yoichiach shefakayich ligoy la'ilam vein level ligoy lachatzayin ma'ale moicher. But that we could ask as well, steach chuza shkein hayra kayich ligoy miyad moicher batir chayim yoichiach v'chazer adin la rizah krizav la rizah krizav hatzad hashava shebehem shenigolin, that they are redeemed. Ve'ein loive v'goyel lachatzayin, and they cannot be borrowed and redeemed, nor can it be redeemed in half. Afani, so too I, Avi Makdish, Shenigav in Loiv v'goyel lachatzayin. In classical, really all you need to do is line up the different dinim, and we'll come out with this Chazer Adin, this Sad HaShava, this common denominator between all of them. And for there, the Gemara wants to prove Ein Loiv v'goyel lachatzayin. Amar le Mar Zutra. Says Mar Zutra, slow down, even the Sada Shaveh I could ask on. Amar le Mar Zutra Breder Amari le Ravina. Igale me'evrach malat Sada Shaveh Shavahen. There's a common denominator that what? Maybe the only reason for that din. Shkein hayra koichon ligal b'shana shniya, that they have to be redeemed. There's a weakening with regard to redeeming it in the second year, that, as we spoke out, that when it comes to a Meicher Stei Achuza, you only have 2 years, whereas When it came to Abayis Batir Achaim, you only have 1 year. Timer b'magdish avakach legal b'gal shniya. Amar le Ravina ikalem misham the ikalem meimar. Eved ivri animkar liakum yechich. And now we're introducing another entity into our Kalva Chaimer. And Eved ivri sold to a guy sheyafe koichai ligal b'shana shniya. And yet, and that's how we see that obviously A does not factor directly into B, because if it did, then Eved ivri and Ikal Na'akum would have the same din. That is the Gemara's teretz. And it continues, that's really the end of part A. I said the end of part A was how the Gemara answered Bachlekes of Rabbanan and Rav Shimon. It's not fully accurate, because now we just wrapped up the loose ends of our Kalva Chaimer. Continues the Gemara, once we brought up the topic of Abayis B'Bati Yerachayma, says the Gemara, let's figure out what is the status by redemption from the Krivim. We know that when one sells his Bayis B'Bati Yerachayma, he has this unique din that he's able to buy it back. But now, wonders the Gemara, does that din transfer to his relatives as well? First word in line is Minei. Asks Ravuna Bar Chinam Erev Sheshes, HaMoicher Bayis Yerachayma Nigal Likroivim Oy Einay Nigal Likroivim. Is the house able to be redeemed by relatives? Explains the question. Gulasai Mistei Achuza Gamar. Do we learn a Gzeir Shava from Stei Achuza, and therefore Ma Stei Achuza Einay Nigeles Lechatzoin? And yet, it has Nigalas Likroivim. Avainami, so to this case of Meicher Bayis Yerachayma, sell a house in a walled city, ain't Nigal Lechatzayin, but V'Nigal Likroivim. That's one side of the Shaila. Oidelma, or perhaps Ki Kisivi Geula Bechatzayin Udechsev. Maybe the whole drasha, the whole limud, is only with regard to redeeming in half of Bekroivim, like Siv. And that is the Shaila that Ravuna Bar Chinna posed to Rav Sheshes. Amar Le answers Rav Sheshes, Einoi Nigal. A very straight up answer, no, you cannot redeem the field by relatives. Eisvei asked the Gemara on that teretz. Says in the Brisa, quoting a pasuk, B'chol Gula Titnoi. In all, you're going to redeem. The rabbis is comes to include Batim Ve'eved Ivri. This includes both the case of Abayis Batir Yerachayim and Eved Ivri. That what? Suggests the Gemara, my love, Batir Yerachayim and Eved Ivri. So from here we would have a source that Batir Yerachayim, yes, has an extra day to redeem by relatives. And says Gemara, Loi Batir Chatzerim, houses of open downs, which have the special kula like Sadais. Says the Gemara, why would you need such a limud? It's explicit in the pasuk. I'll stay haaretz ichashev. Says the pasuk. Answers the Gemara, no, that's to teach us that there's an obligation in such a scenario on their relatives, like Rav Eliezer de Tanya. We learned in a brayso of a gal es mimkar achiv. Says the pasuk, the relatives shall redeem the brother, the mimkar, the sale of the echav of his brothers. Rishos ataymer, this is giving permission to the relatives to redeem. Or maybe it's an obligation. Talmud Loimar, says the Torah, v'ishki loy goyel, to a man that has no redeemer. V'cheish adam, really, says the Brisa, does this exist? V'cheish adam b'Yisrael she'ein loy goyelim, elazeh she'yesh loy v'einoi roitze likach, it doesn't want to buy him. Sharshos b'yadai, that in such a scenario, Sharshos b'yadai, Shos b'yadai, Divrei Rav Yeshua. Says Rav Yeshua that if the relative doesn't want, he has the option. Or Eliezer Oimer v'gal es mimkar achiv chayva, that creates an obligation. Chayva ata Oimer chayva oy eno el rishos. Which one is it? Talmud Loimar. On the last narrow line, B'chol Gula Titnoi Hakasiv Kavoi Chayva. That's where we see it's an obligation, and that is the source to our din. Amru le Rabbanan le Ravashi. Continues the Gemara of this theme of the relatives redeeming. Says the Gemara, Amru le Rabbanan le Ravashi. V'amri le Ravina le Ravashi. According to the Mandamar, the aforementioned Braisa, that says we're coming to include houses in the walled city. Hainu d'chsev b'chol. Elamandamar, the rabbis b'at chatzeirim. My bekol, answers the Gemara, kasha. Eisvei, Abaye, the Gemara continues asking on Rav Sheishes, now Abaye's turn. Why does the Torah say the word Yigalanim 3 times? The rabbis call all the cases of a redemption in this Seder and this order. So what does it seem to mean? It seems to mean that the same Geula, the same power and ability of the relatives to redeem is unanimous. My love, does this not mean Bati Rachayma ve'eved ivri? And this kasha on Rav Sheishes, why? Because he said that the walled cities are not actually able to be redeemed by the relatives. Answers the Gemara, Loi, Bati Chaserim, Ustei Achuza. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Bati Chaserim Ustei Achuza be'ed yaksiv. Al stay aretz yichashev. Answers the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom of Chaval V'amid Aleph, Kedamar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. As Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak explained, the Karov Kodem. This teaches us that the closest relative comes first. Achanami le Karov Kodem. Says the Gemara, what is this din of Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak? We're bringing in a new din, a din of Karov Kodem. What is this din? Explains the Gemara. Heicha itmar de Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak aha. They asked the following Shaila, Eved Ivri, Hanimgar li Yisrael, Nigal li Kroivim, Oy Einoi Nigal li Kroivim. Ali, Badir Abilai Tibai Lachadar Mishan Nigal Be'ela, Nigal Be'sheish. One who's not redeemed by relatives is redeemed by 6 years. What do we see? Lai Mifrak is not redeemed by Kroivim, by relatives. Ki Tibai Lacha, what's the Shaila? Ali Badir Abanan. What is the halacha? Yalfinan sacher v'loy darshin yigalenu, oidemu yigalenu lezev v'loy la'acher. So says the Gemara, that is the shaila according to the Rabbanan. Tashema, 3 lines in the bottom, trying to figure out what is the halacha. But an Eved Ivri anim kali Yisrael, is there din pediyah by the krivim, by the relatives? Tashema v'chol gula titnoi. The rabbis bought him Eved Ivri. Says the pasuk b'chol geulim titnoi. From here we learn out houses and an Eved Ivri. My love, bate are chayma ve'Eved Ivri animkar li Yisrael. Is it not coming to include both of those cases? So we see a raya that there's redemption by relatives by Eved Ivri animkar Yisrael. Says the Gemara, loy, no. Who asked the Gemara in the last line of Chaval V'amid Aleph? So we see explicitly that Eved Ivri, the Jewish slave sold to a guy, is able to redeem by his family. So why would we need another source? Says the Gemara as we turn over to Chaval V'amid Beis. Ha'ho lekavay chayva va'afilu Rav Yeshua. The extra pasuk is coming to say that there's an obligation to redeem this Eved Ivri animkar liYisrael. Tashema. So continues the Gemara on the first line of Chaval Beis. Let's try another raya. Matamaloi mar yigolani gimel bamim l'rabbis kol ha'geula sheniga alois keseder hazeh. My love suggests the Gemara about the Yerachayim of Eved Ivri and Nimkal Yisrael. Lie. But the Chaserim Zechuzah. But the Chaserim Yaziksibu. I'll stay Aretz Yichashev. I'm not going to Yitzchak. Karev Kaidem, and that is where this din of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak came from. And now we continue going back finally to our Mishnah, 2 dots, 8 lines down. Chav Aleph Amid Beis. Hanirtza Nikna Bertzia. A nirtza, an eved that chose not to go free and rather have his ear pierced. What is the halacha? That act of ear piercing is that which is the kinyan on such an eved. Says the Gemara, where do we know this from? The Chsiv says the Torah of Ratza Adayim Es Aznai B'Martzeh. He makes a hole in his ear. V'koines Atzal B'Yavlim. He says Adayin. Where do we see that from? The Chsiv says the Torah of Avdai. We learn out for the fact of us and he should serve him. This sounds like only him, and therefore when the Adayin, when the master dies, he goes free. V'Lo Yisabem V'Lo Yisabas. Lo Ilam. Continues the Basek. He serves him forever. La'ol Moishel Yovel. That means forever until Yovel. Says the Gemara, let's delve a bit deeper into the halachas of Nirtzeh. This is going to take us for the duration of today. Tanu Rabbanan. Martzea, says the Basadi, make a hole in his ear with a Martzea, with an hole. Ein li'ela Martzea. That's you have to make the hole. Menayin, the rabbis, how do we know to include other utensils? Asul vasir v'machat v'amekadeach. A wooden bag, thorn, needle, and an auger. How do we know all these items could also be used to make the hole? V'hamichtav, or a stylist. Hamaloymar v'lakach, the rabbis called davar shenikach biyad. Any handheld item could be the item to make the hole in the ear of this ever different Rav Yehuda. Rabbi disagrees and he says, Ma martzea miyuchad. Just like a martzea is miyuchad shel mateches. It's a specific instrument made out of metal. Av kol shel mateches. Anything made of metal. Davar acher, another Joshua martzea lavi, a martzea gadol. The martzea gadol, the large awl, that's what you use for the process to make the hole in the eved's ear. Amar Rebbe Lazar, you done berivi. Says Rav Elazar Yudar Berivi, that was his name, Hayadai Reish. He would teach the following. Kishain writes in, when they would make this hole in the ear, Ein writes in, Elo be milsa, only on the ear lobe, not the cartilage on the upper part of the ear, but rather the little lobey guy at the bottom. The Chachamim Maimrim, that was Yudan Berivi. Say the Chachamim made of every kayin yirtza. And evidently, a kohen cannot have his ear pierced. And there's halacha that a kohen is not able to be made of almum. Vim Tarim Milsa Aim writes it. But if you're going to tell me that where do you make the hole in the milsa, in the earlobe? Hey, every kohen yaseh balmum. How is that considered a mum? It's not a mum to have a hole in your earlobe. Says the Chachamim, and different ear-piercing styles. Say the Chachamim was on the top of the ear, whereas the Rav Yehuda, the first Shita, Yudan Berivi said it was in the ear lobe. Says the Gemara, what is this Machlekes Yosef Yehuda and Rebbe? Let's go back. This is not talking about where the piercing is made, whether it's in the lobe or in the upper cartilage of the ear, but rather this is dealing with the utensil that is used. Says the Gemara, the Rebbe Darish Kali Prati. Rebbe Darish is Kalu Prat, Kal being a general, Prat being a specific. V'lakachta, it says you shall take his klal. Martea, the all is a Prat. Ba'azdayin is the Erubadelis in the door. Chazaru klal is another general statement. Klalu Pratu klal, says Rebbe. Yata Adon Elikena Prat. We have to be similar to the specific. Ma prat mefurash shel mateches. Avkol shel mateches. That's what Rebbe gets. That the utensil to make the hole in the ear has to be made out of metal. Rabbi Yosi darish ribuyi umiuti. No, general and specific. V'lakachta riboy. That's a general. Martzea is a miot. B'azlein is here badels chazav ribo miyot ribo hakol. So my Rabbi, what do we come to include? Rabbi called Mili on the first white line, and the basic difference being, when we come to include everything, do we include only that which is specific to the item we're learning from, Mateches, or anything? My Mia, what do we exclude? Sam, making the hole with a poshet. Amar Mar, Says the Gemara. Let's go a drop deeper. Hamartzeh, yes, the Braisi love him, Martzeh, God of the large all. My mashmak, the Marava, Hayerech, Hamamuna, Shabiyerech. Chinami, Hamartzeh, the Hey, Ayadiyah, the extra Hey, Yosef, Hatzadik, is Miyucha Shabimartzin, the special one that makes the holes, the special large all. Continues the Gemara, 2 dots on the third Y line, running out of time. Let's just go a drop further. Amar Avalazar Yudin Brivia Darish Kishin Reitzin. Ein Reitzin Elbin Milsa, where they make the hole in the lobe. Chachamim even in Kain Nirta Nation Asab Amam. Therefore the Chachamim learned that the hole is not made in the lobe, but rather in the upper cartilage of the ear. Ask the Gemara, I don't understand. V'yaseb Almam. So let it be about Almam. Why is that a problem? Amar Rabbi Shila Amar Kra. He returns to his family, teaches us that he has to go back back to what he was. So if he was a Kayin, he has to go back to his previous state of Kahuna, and the process of Avdos cannot make him Pasol Likehuna. Ibayi Lahu asks the Gemara, Eved Ivri Kayin Maushim Sal Rabbi Shivcha Kenanis, can the Torah, can the master, give him a shivcha maidservant of a Kanani girl? What's the shayla chidushu? Loishla kahanim, loishla yisraelim. The whole thing is a novelty, which we spoke about. It's insane if you think about it. That this Yiddish boy is given a shivcha kenainis. So do we say it's a chiddush? So it should apply across the board. Oidelmo, or perhaps shiny kayanim. Hayal v'riben akasa mitzi yiseiros. No. Kahanim are different. The different kahanim would not be allowed to have them married to a shivcha kinanis. Answers the Gemara. We have a machlekes Rav Amar Mutter, uShmuel Amar Aser. Machlekes Rav uShmuel. Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Anan. Akasha on Shmuel that said it's Aser. Kavid b'mar Shmuel be'is kulmdari ital litu. Were you playing the Iskam Duri? My time, why didn't you say from here? Why? Why didn't you say? Why? We just learned a moment ago that you can't pierce the ear of the kain because you become a balmum. Vim, Timer, if you're going to tell me Nar Moisel Shivcha Kenainis, Tepeklei, Divina, Hafti Sadoni Isishti Vesbana Eveleka. If you're going to tell me that the master is not able to give him a Kanani slave as a wife, why do we say that the reason why a Kayin cannot become a Nirtza is because he's going to become a Balmum? We should say a more fundamental reason. That the reason is that when he becomes a Nirtza, he has to say, Ahafti, I love this Ishti Vesbanai, Veleka. And if he's a Kayin, he's not going to be able to say that because he doesn't get a wife. Says the Gemara, Su Loi Midi. This is a beautiful kasha. Shmuel is out the window based off of this kasha. And on that note, we're going to pause over here. We'll pick it up from a Kayin in the Dinam of Yifas Tayyar in the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.